after Descartes has doubted that the world outside his mind even exists, after he's doubted that trees and stars and mountains and teacups and even his own body, even his own hands and feet exist, how does he restore belief in them? We've been waiting for this moment for quite some time in this series as we go through Descartes' first Discourse on Method and second Meditations on First Philosophy using the Hackett edition translated by Donald Kress. Now, actually, we already did go over this in the Discourse on Method, but now we're going over it in the Meditations where he goes into more detail. And we are not going to go into all the detail in this video. There are several pages we will skip or skim over. If you want a thorough understanding of Descartes' philosophy, you really need to read the whole book. Meditation 6. Actually, let's not go to Meditation 6 yet. Let's review Meditation 5. Descartes says that he sees plainly that the certainty and truth of every science depends exclusively upon the knowledge of the true God, to the extent that prior to my becoming aware of him, I was incapable of achieving perfect knowledge about anything else. After knowing himself, he can't possibly know anything other than God until he has first known God. Knowledge of God is the foundation for knowledge of anything else. And the whole point of this philosophical project Descartes is on here is to establish knowledge on a solid foundation. And that requires God. But now it is possible for me to achieve full and certain knowledge about countless things, both about God and other intellectual matters, as well as about the entirety of that corporeal nature which is the object of pure mathematics. So math, or I would rather say it this way, and I think this is clearer and probably just as accurate, more accurate than what saying pure mathematics might connote in contemporary English, so maybe I'm missing something. I think it's better to say geometry, at least in contemporary English. Geometry studies the essence of physical things, because the entire physical world is nothing but that which occupies space, that which is extended in the philosophical terminology, or that which has height, width, and depth. What mathematics, or a little more precisely for contemporary English, what geometry studies is nothing but height, width, and depth. When we study geometry, the very essence of matter, because we're studying that which has height, width, and depth, that which is extended. Okay, so he knows now that that is the nature of matter. What it is just that which occupies space, but he doesn't yet know whether it exists. He knows that mathematics or geometry is what studies it, but he doesn't yet know whether it even exists. So now, Meditation 6 says, it remains for me to examine whether material things exist. And then he goes over a lot of stuff, getting ready to answer, and clarifying things in his philosophy. There's talk about the distinction between understanding and imagination, there's talk about how from the faculty of imagination it seems to follow that physical things exist. And you should keep in mind that imagination is here in this technical philosophical terminology the mental power of representing things we perceive through the five senses. So the mental imagery of the teacup is what imagination does. I'm holding my teacup, my eyes see the teacup, but its mental representation in my mind is what imagination is. All right. Then he talks about this. He says, I must see whether I can obtain any reliable argument for the existence of corporeal things from those things that are perceived by the mode of thinking that I call sense. So he knows that sensation, taste, sight, smell, hearing, touch, is something his mind does. It's one of those modes of thinking, and thinking is what he does. He knows I exist, and I am a thinking thing. But when that particular variety of thinking, which is sensation or sense perception, sees teacup, green book, and the whole physical world, are we perceiving anything that actually exists? That's what he has to figure out now. And he says, first of all, to be sure, I will review here all the things I previously believed to be true because I perceived them by means of the senses and the causes I had for thinking this. Next, I will assess the causes why I later called them into doubt. Finally, I will consider what I must now believe about these things. So there's going to be a lot of review here and making sure he's sure before he gets to the answer. And again, you really should read the whole Meditation 6 if you want to understand Descartes' philosophy properly. But now, he says, getting to that third bit, having begun to have a better knowledge of myself and the author of my origin, better knowledge of the mind and God, that is. I am of the opinion that I must not rashly admit everything that I seem to derive from the senses, but neither for that matter should I call everything into doubt. So he shouldn't remain in doubt. He shouldn't disbelieve everything, but he shouldn't believe too hastily either. And actually, I guess he's still not giving the answer just yet. We still need almost 2 paragraphs, but one of them is really long. I'll skip the first one. I'll just say in it he's reviewing the nature of himself as a thinking thing and the idea he has of a physical body, in particular his own body, which is very closely joined to him, it seems, but does it even exist? And then, of course, it will remain to be seen how closely it's joined to him and what is the nature of the mind and body. Mind-body connection, all that. Well, I expect we'll get to that perhaps in the next video. But now, let's just wrap this up by giving his famous answer, his evidence that a physical world exists outside his mind. In the Hackett edition of the Discourse and the Meditations, or on page 97, the triumphant answer: "But since God is not a deceiver, it is patently obvious that he does not send me these ideas either immediately by himself or even through the mediation of some creature that contains the objective reality of these ideas not formally but only eminently. For since God has given me no faculty whatsoever for making this determination, but has instead given me a great inclination to believe that these ideas issue from corporeal things, I fail to see how God could be understood not to be a deceiver if these ideas were to issue from a source other than corporeal things, and consequently corporeal things exist. That's it. Corporeal, again, means physical, material, made of matter. Things made of matter are corporeal things. So now let me just paraphrase the argument, leaving out some of the technical terminology. Though, for those interested in Descartes, mastering as much of that technical terminology as possible is strongly recommended, and you may well uncover some things that those of us are missing who are happy or quite content to just paraphrase in simple English. But now let me attempt to paraphrase in simple English. I have in my idea, and I'll also go over the argument again while paraphrasing in simple English with an example. I have a perception of what appears to be a teacup existing outside my mind. Does it exist? Well, it certainly appears to me that my idea in my mind of the teacup comes from a teacup existing outside my mind. And it appears to me that I actually have this body that is perceiving this teacup, with these eyes and these hands that can perceive the teacup. And I know that this is within me a faculty. It's a faculty for thinking. And I know that my mind is a thinking thing made by God, and God is good. And God gave me this faculty. And God would not have given me faculties that are prone to making massive error. God would have given me good, useful, largely accurate faculties. Faculties that are fallible, faculties that I can misuse, but faculties that are largely correct, largely reliable, particularly if I use them correctly. And therefore, these faculties are correct. I find within me this almost irresistible inclination to believe that my senses are reporting to me what actually exists. First, my body exists, and second, I use it to perceive the teacup, my eyes and my hands, and taste and smell and sound or hearing all perceive the teacup. And this inclination is given me by God because it's part of how I think. It's part of my mental faculties, and God doesn't give me bad faculties. So that's how you know the world outside the mind exists. That's how you know you're not in the matrix. And this is also how you can restore other things. Early in the method of doubt, you doubt whether other people exist. Well, you have a strong inclination, an almost irresistible urge to believe that other people exist. You perceive what appears to be the actions of other people, not just robots, not just matrix programs, but actual conscious beings who have bodies rather like yours. And this too is a belief formed by a faculty. And these faculties are given by God. And therefore they're good. And therefore they are largely reliable and correct. And that is how you put knowledge back on a solid foundation. And we will get to the remainder of Meditation 6 in the next video or videos. and perhaps we'll clarify what exactly is this relationship between mind and body. Thanks for watching.